Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first afternoon of this beautiful Saturday at the Sanctuary Summit 2024. That was quiet. Good morning, everybody. So incredible to see everyone here getting their body moving at 8 a.m. and then continuing to groove on through the morning. That was beautiful. We have up here for you now, we're going to present you with a communities panel, which is an opportunity to dive in and learn from a bunch of experienced communitarians and solutionaries. And I wanted to take an opportunity because I know that so many of you, how many of you actually came to the farm this weekend because it was on the farm? Anybody? Can we do that one more time? Make some noise if you came this weekend because it was on a community and on the farm. That's amazing. It's like the farm is the secret band that's a headliner. And that tells me a lot about who you guys are. That you came with an open heart to learn about what it feels like to be in community and to be on community. And so on the stage with me now, I have an amazing panel of humans that are all, what we all have in common is we're manifesting ground-based community initiatives in the areas where we live, from as diverse of areas from the southeast to the western side of Canada to California. And I just wanted to create an opportunity for these beautiful humans to share their inspiration and experience with you all, and also for you all to share your inspiration and curiosities with the people up on stage. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to do a brief introduction of each panel member, and then after we do the panel member, we're going to do some questions both from the panel to the audience and from the audience to the panel. So feel free to just participate and scoot on in if you want to. And so yeah, thank you all so much for being here to participate in this. I'm gonna pass all the way to my Capoeista brother on the far side, Zach, and let him introduce his project, and we'll come down the line from there.
Thank you, Biko. Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful dance, what a beautiful sunshine. My name is Zachary Townsmith, and I live outside Knoxville, in a really beautiful space that was cultivated by my wife's family. It's almost 130 acres, really mostly wooded and spring-fed, and just a really amazing place to be. And it comes about because of the vision of let's say, 2 generations above mine, and now my kids get to enjoy this place. And for us, part of the challenge has been how to bring community into our space in a way that also respects the legacy of the family in the space. And particularly, as my father-in-law likes to say, people always ask him what he farms out there. He says, "I farm privacy." And this year was a good crop, he says. So how we can bring something new into that space and build community using that space as a center, but at the same time have a space that remains private for the family. So those are some of the challenges that we've been wrestling with in a personal way. And then my specialty, what I love to do is support people in collaborating, helping people express their creativity, not just individually, but all together. And that's innately challenging. But also, the challenges that the world is facing today aren't going to be solved by individuals. So we have to figure out how to do these things. And in doing that, I've supported the development of lots of collective business models. And so my interest and my specialty is as much around the creation of how we can come together and and develop value through creative processes that's going to allow the projects that we want to see in the world to grow and to blossom. So it's really an honor to be up here with all these people, and yeah, that's sort of my angle on it is a little bit more of the sort of how can we build more value-driven collective models. We have a yoga teacher training school that's been around for almost 10 years now, and it's a collective model so that we have consensus-based decision making, and that simple aspect of our business, what it's done is it's made sure that the 7 of us, rather than figuring out who's in what voting block or how we do things, are actually aligning with each other in order to move forward. And it means we move a little bit slower, but at the end, I think that decisions that we make in the way that we have cultivated our own relationships and our own community has supported our vision in the world in ways that more traditional models of business aren't able to do. So, yeah, again, thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Imani Mamalushin, and I'm here with my partner Paul River Richardson. We are from Haven Earth Trade School. We just secured 216 acres in East Tennessee on the Georgia line, where we're setting up the Haven Earth Trade School. So much like Zach, part of our consideration, several things: privacy. We have set up our land in a trust, much like the farm, which has been, an awesome model for so many people. So it's such an honor to be here with everyone. And so with that, we've also established a private membership association and a 508 Ministry of Nature. So that maintains that we're in the private realm, which is very important to our members. So through the trade school, we're focused on building healthy hemp homes, and that's what we'll be teaching people. We have our first natural builder training on our land in Tennessee, May 5th to the 25th, and we are looking for we have a few spots for a few more apprentices, so we have some info over there if anybody's interested later. But I think the significant thing for us is also value in creating a model that is educational as well as building an economy around. And I'll pass it to River to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. His background is as an architect and designer, and a big part of what we're looking to is creating a specific strategy when we return to the land.
Hey y'all, how you doing? Yay, thanks Biko for the opportunity to share. I'm from the UK originally, so I know cluster development like probably no one else in this audience, because we just got cram-packed together. And then I worked a lot overseas internationally in the architecture field, and then traveled extensively looking at how communities were successful or not, especially in Russia. I spent a lot of time in the Anastasia communities and out there, and just looking at like why these communities weren't really being successful. And so it was really about creating a model, actually a template for creating a way for us to get back to the land that is actually vibrant and full of energy. And because I found what was lost was people go to the land with an idealistic viewpoint, and that soon kind of gets downtrodden, and when the reality of life hits in, and we need to make money and all of these different things. So it was really about bringing something like hemp, which is kind of like new yet ancient plant that's coming back on the scene, which is really kind of weaving together a lot of narratives around how we get back to the earth right now, and also about how do we live in healthy environments, how do we care for ourselves, and through education we get this opportunity to bring in new energy into our environments, which is really what's going to sustain this. So that's kind of, we'll share more on that, but that's really our model, is about inspiration and building this energy around a new model of getting back to the land.
Hey y'all, I'm Lindsay. I come here from rural North Alabama, from a community called Wild Hydrangea. And yeah, we've got a neighbor community across the street called Common Ground, so we kind of have a village of community and folks around us. My draw to intentional community, I really started when I was a kid at summer camp. And I was like, like many kids at summer camp, it's like, why can't we just live at camp? And I feel like other folks kind of grew out of that, and I just didn't. I was like, no, really, I want to live at camp. So my community, we are a little pocket between the folks that live there. It's about 400 acres. We're in a very rural, very conservative county in Alabama. I came into the community about 10 years ago, and most of the folks that live there are at this point in their 70s. And so some of the things that we are learning about together are what it is to be an intergenerational community, to bring new people in. Yeah. What is it like to live and die in community together, and share that life experience with each other? What is ownership? What does that look like in the society that we live in that has its own, rules and things that we're subject to? And then what does that look like with the values that we have together, and how are we creating something that both can exist like in those structures, right, and can protect us within those structures, but also to where we're able to be in alignment with how we feel, which is really different than that dominant model. So yeah, I think there's a lot I could speak to about community in the South, community in a rural place, and what it is to grow together when you come from really different backgrounds.
Hi everyone, my name is Dee. Some friends call me D-Light. I am coming from the Asheville area, Swannanoa, North Carolina. I am a member and a teacher at the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. And yes, we are revillaging death care. It's something I felt really called to for most of my life. When I was just a wee babe, about 5 years old, I would volunteer at nursing homes with my grandmother and do Meals on Wheels and volunteer at the senior center. And I felt a strong pull to my elders and the wisdom that they hold, and also how separate they are from us as they enter into that sunset season of their life. And I found that I wanted to bring my love, bring my light, and make sure that they knew they were not forgotten. I think that happens now a lot in dying in general. In our society, there's a lot of fear and a lot of the unknown. And so when we stand in it with those who are moving through that, when we're in it with the families that are losing a loved one, we're changing the world by doing that. We're changing society. We're able to bring all of our individual gifts, because in our community at the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, everyone has a plethora of unique gifts, just like all of us. Every person that I'm looking at, I'm so curious of all of your gifts and what you choose to bring to this world. And at the center, it is, our yeses are celebrated as our nos are in the same way, and we are invited to push our boundaries, our internal boundaries, and being held and supported through that, and in a way that I haven't experienced in most of my earlier years. So really being able to walk with those going through sometimes the loneliest parts of life is an incredible honor. and to also be in the doula training program, which was just launched a month ago. To be able to hold those who also feel called to this work, to make space for that, has been an incredible gift. And for myself too, I always wanted to be in this work and didn't know where to begin, and thought that I would end up having to do it on my own, by myself. And I am so grateful that that is not the case, because we need each other in those spaces. I envision it as we're the insulation, standing right behind someone as they're moving through these chapters. And if they hit a root in the ground and they trip and they stumble, we're right there to just have our hands behind their back and make sure that they know that they can keep going. And there's so much to say around death care and everything that our community is doing, because we are also living. We hold them both, the conscious living and dying. We may be with those who are dying and the families who are moving through grief and loss, and in that we are learning to live fully. So, thank you all for having me.
My name is Hannah Fowler, and I don't have much more to say than that. I came with Dee to represent the Center for Conscious Living and Dying in Swannanoa, just outside of Asheville. And it's an honor to be here with you all. Thank you, Biko. I'll make it short and sweet, which is just to share that we're a nonprofit organization that's an end-of-life care home that's non-medical. And so you can come to us to receive care in your last days. It's entirely volunteer-run, and it's free of charge. And those come to us who have a prognosis of 2 months or less to live. And Dee described it beautifully. We're a community that comes together basically to remember that, similar to the farm, we all know how to do this. We all know how to die. And it's a way of simply remembering what lives in all of us as an intrinsic and natural way of being and walking one another home. You don't have to be a medical provider. We don't have to warehouse our elders. It's a way of remembering what we like to say is something that's so old it feels new. And so that's really what we're doing there, is remembering this old way of being with death as a rite of passage and not a medical event. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse today. Embracing death in myself today a little bit. And as you mentioned, living is also such an important part of the center. It's the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. And so, yes, we're gathering around death, but it's really to use death as a mirror to wake up to who we truly are and what we're really doing here. And so we use each other in community as mirrors. It often feels like a living experiment, a laboratory of some sort, to really awaken to how to use the yoga of relationship in community to live more fully and to die before we die, as the ancient mystics once said. So that's what I'll say for now. We'll have brochures and cards somewhere. You can come find us and we'll give you more information on the trainings and all the fun stuff. We'd love to have you visit. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Look. I live here on the farm. I have a small public speaking phobia, so thank you, Biko. This is my 10th year here. And I think aside from being involved with Summit, which I feel might be one of my greatest contributions yet to the community, it aligns greatly with my mission in being here is to share it with everyone so that you can take it back to your communities too. And that's how we change the world. So I do a lot here. I wear a lot of different hats. Mostly just community organizing and sharing this place with people. I'm raising children here, and that was a big draw to me, was the multi-generational aspect. When I got here, I was amazed at how well the generations meshed with one another, and that there was respect among the generations, and that's not really how I grew up. I think I grew up in a way where visiting my grandparents was like a stuffy ordeal, and it was like be on your best behavior, and there wasn't much of a genuine, authentic relationship there. And so I have a lot of friends in many different generations, which is beautiful. What else do you do? What else do I do? There's so much.
So, Laura is responsible for birthing the market day at the farm, which takes place under this beautiful structure, and this structure is the meeting hall. And she's been steadily gathering people little by little by little, and I've been on tour sort of watching her do the things that need to be done to make this place blossom and flower. And so when we decided to do the Sanctuary Summit up here, it's almost like the whole vision of the summit and the market day and just the general idea of y'all coming in. She is the bones of how you got here and how it was organized and how we figured it all out and continue to.
Thank you.
She likes spreadsheets. And
This is all thanks to spreadsheets. Thank you, Biko. Yeah, it warms my heart to be here and have you all here and be included among such amazing people doing such amazing work. So, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Steinman, and I've traveled here from Nelson, British Columbia, which is the traditional territory of the Sinayaks, the Tanaha, and the Sylph people. And I do want to just say how at home I feel here. I'm an ecstatic dance DJ, and so here we are coming out of an ecstatic dance. I also wrote a book about community-owned grocery stores, and here's a grocery store. And I'm a co-developer of a co-housing community. And some co-housing community people. Yeah. So I came across the co-housing model along with 12 other families about 12 years ago. And we purchased a piece of land, about 25 acres, and looked to the co-housing model, which is a model that we borrowed from Denmark, and it had come to the United States through Chuck Durrett and Katie McCammon from Nevada City, California. And they brought this model in the 1980s to the US, and we hired them to be our consultants and to help us as a community develop the co-housing model. And we chose the co-housing model in part because it was a framework that had experience. It had decades of experience that we could borrow. And we used that model to purchase the land, to build our community. We are 65 residents, 22 children and teenagers, and 12 65 and older, 12 elders in our community. So we're a multi-generational community. My home is a multi-generational home. I live with my mother-in-law. She has her own space. And the journey for me in co-housing has been one of letting go of the structure and allowing for the fluidity of who we are as human beings. And that's been one of the interesting challenges with adopting a structure within many more structures beyond that, and being able to continue to allow ourselves as fluid beings to keep informing the evolution of our community. And it's a beautiful place to live, and all the challenges that come with it are there too. One thing I've learned being a co-developer of an intentional community or a co-housing community is anytime I mention to anybody, oh yeah, I live in a co-housing community or I live in an intentional community, 99% of the time the response is always, oh, how's that going? And it's this almost expectation that must be challenging. And for people that have known me over the 20 years I've lived in Nelson, many expect that somehow something will fail. There's this expectation that being able to live in community comes with so many challenges that it really isn't for everyone. And so, one of the themes I know that was presented to me coming into this panel was this idea of legacy and how you preserve all that you've invested into the community. And one of the challenges I've come across as a developer and resident of our community is watching the transition of people leave and come in. So we started with 24 homes, 24 families. Of those 24 families, only 8 remain in the community. So being able to navigate the different perspectives of what community is. Community generally attracts people who are very opinionated and very passionate. And with that comes a duty of care to allow for all those perspectives. And so I'll just end by sharing that one of my journeys now is to develop a way for us to communicate with each other beyond the traditional forms of communication like email and texting and what might be best described as discussion, where we sit in a room and speak alone together. And what I'm working towards is how can we speak collectively together in such a way where there's a conversation with a center and not sides. And this is the work I've been doing now in our community.
Greetings and thanks, y'all. Thank you to everyone so far. Such amazing people. I feel really honored to be up on the stage with you all. And as I look around, and I was looking around during the dance, I was thinking the same thing. Like, man, each person here has their own story and journey and relationship with community. And lots to say there and lots to be curious about. I made a little impromptu rhyme that kind of was birthed out of that I'll share quickly. First off, my name is Blair, and I think that we're all here because we're living out ancient prayer, wisdom, and vision, shifting prisms with this circle that we're all sitting. Slowly, we're grounding this vision of interconnected communities woven with fruit trees and living systems, building with mud and passive solar design, making most efficient use of the sun and the sky, making loose schedules with the stars as our guides, planning in space for our hearts, synchronicity, and material to align. Because it's easy for the commitment to the dream to eat up all your free time. Forget center, know what's yours and what's mine. That's as far as I got with this rhyme. But, I've had a long journey with community. When I was a teenager, I was pretty blessed to find my way into Lakota Sweat Lodge and learned how to pray, and I just remember really clearly getting moved to remember how to live close to the earth. And my prayer from the beginning has been to be shown that and also how to bring others who are interested back to that. And through time, that got me into a place where in 1999 I founded an organization called Common Vision, and we did a program called Fruit Tree Tour where we planted trees throughout the state of California at schools and community centers. And we started out with one school bus running on vegetable oil, and then that grew into a caravan of 3 buses, 3 trucks, and 3 wagons, all running on vegetable oil, where we carried 1,000 bare root fruit trees with us and all of our food, drums, and vegetable oil, and went to a different school each day, planting trees and dividing groups into drum players and trying to help them understand the truth and myth around agricultural rhythms and traditional agricultural rhythms, and then also hands-on planting. And then we also traveled with an elder from the Chumash people and Zapatistas, and allowed them time and space to talk about everything from community to GMO seed. And then after about a decade of doing that, I grounded out on a piece of land where I put what I learned through that tour and the time that I took going to organic farms, communities, rainbow gatherings, and everything I learned about farming and natural building, and trying to put it in one place. Because as I'm sure everyone here can attest to, it's very hard to find a true closed model of permaculture in one place. We'll go to different sites and see elements in place, but very few places where everything's there. The gray water, the compost, the food growing, the earthen buildings, the free time, harvesting materials, all of that is usually compartmentalized between spaces. So my goal is to create that in a place and then be able to empower friends who come and visit to be able to do the same wherever they go. I think that's my short answer.
So I think I agreed to moderate this a couple months ago and forgot about it until a couple minutes ago. But one of the things that I wanted to share, and I want to keep it brief because we actually really want to hear from you all and get some interaction and some questions and some comments. But one thing, when I was talking to Blair the other day, he goes, you know, I really want to talk about committing to commit. Committing to commit. And by the way, my name is Biko. I grew up here on the farm, and one of the things that blows my frickin' mind about this place is that these 20-somethings came here and were like, for the rest of our lives. 20-somethings. For the rest of our lives. Seriously. This place has 80% original founding members. So, it's crazy, that level of commitment. So when he was saying committing to commit, it's like the idea that like, we don't know how it's gonna go. We can't tell you how hard it's gonna be. We're gonna be wrong. Can we do it anyway? You know, because it's not gonna be, hey, we know how it's gonna go. It's gonna take this much energy and I'm gonna be right. No, it's gonna be, we have no fucking idea. We still don't know. And we're wrong about most of what we assume is correct. But will you make this journey with me? And that's more honest, because it's gutsy and it takes a ton of adjustment to really learn how to do it in real time with the people who are around you in that moment. So I just wanted to put that out there to everybody, and then open the space for questions. And specifically, one of the things that we're interested in talking about is how this vision of community and the legacy of this vision that really came from the generation before us who started to, and before them it was the indigenous people who held this vision of community. How does that legacy pass on from here? And also, if you feel like tuning in with this people, like, what are some of the things that work? What are some of the things that don't work? What are some challenges that you're having in finding community? And just trying to get a better understanding from when we leave this place. It's like, how can we begin to network in a way that grounds our hopes into the land and begins to take physical form in the form of relationships, homes, gardens, and all of those things. So we want to open it up to you all. I think, is it possible for me to bring a mic out to the audience and keep it low? Or is it going to go squealy McSqueal or something? All right. Okay, so anybody with questions, I'm going to bring the mic to you. Unrehearsed. It's going to work.
Biko, while you're doing that, I'll just make some noise.
Please.
So I just wanted to mention that at the center, we have an elder council, and they brought the fire from Cherokee tradition to the center. So when someone's crossing over and they're no longer eating or drinking, we have fire keepers who keep a fire, a physical fire, 24/7 until they leave their body. And I'm just sharing that because that's what, in the spirit of committing to commit, that's what drives us. And we always talk about coming back to the heart of the fire of what it is we're doing here when the bureaucracy and the administrative bullshit, sorry kids, is bogging us down. So that was just what I wanted to share about returning to the fire over and over again to remember.
So does anyone have any questions for the panelists or thoughts to share about community curiosities? Hands? This lovely woman that I know very intimately. Come on, my darling.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and I just want to second Biko's thing about commitment, that my parents came here and they sold 4 houses in Berkeley and gave it all to the farm and never questioned that, ever. is a great model to walk behind. I was speaking to John earlier, and he was talking about communication and the difference between discussion and dialogue and the whole sightedness thing. And I think the community thing is a microcosm of the macrocosm of what's going on in the world, of, right and wrong and divisiveness and taking sides and bullying each other, and the amplification of that during COVID. And I don't think we've healed from COVID. I know we haven't here. We're walking in that direction, but we need some models for support. So I'm really looking toward that myself, because it breaks my heart where it is right now. The amount of violence in the world, the amount of war, the wars between individuals in our community. And I see that there's so many beautiful people, and we really want something different. But how do we do it? So that's a question, that's a comment, that's a whatever to whoever.
I heard how do we deal with the divisiveness that emerged post-COVID? That's what I heard. Does anyone want to talk about how your community has been healing, working with that, working to stay connected in the last 5 years? Some of your practices to stay connected as a community and keep the trust alive?
This story came up to me. I experienced in my community during COVID. So my community, some folks live on the land, some off, and are still involved. And at the time when COVID hit, I was actually living in a different community, but I was still connected to my land-based community. And I had this impulse to want to move back to the land immediately. It was like, in those beginning days where I really felt like I needed to get that felt like safety to me. And at the same time, I didn't actually have a structure to live in my community. My partner had a school bus that I was like, I want to move this school bus to the community, and I want to live there. Which usually in our community, it's a longer process to kind of decide where structures like that go, where the infrastructure is. So we were in a meeting, we're on Zoom, we're all in this kind of panic. I'm talking about how just panicked I am about wanting this bus here, and we got into some of that structural, procedural stuff where people are almost like, a lot of times our impulse can be to lead with a no, or enter it into this longer discussion about how this can be okay. And in the meantime, I felt myself just feeling and expressing this, like, I don't feel safe, I want to move it up there tomorrow. And this isn't usually how things go in community, and I was just so high emotions. Like, you can probably think back to moments of those high emotions. And in the midst of our community moving into a more procedural discussion, another member paused and said, what I want us all to hear while we're talking about this is that Lindsay is telling us that she doesn't feel safe, and that she's asking for us to make a place for her to feel safe. And it kind of reframed that moment away from just what it is to figure out those mechanics into a conversation about care. And I felt the energy changed, and I felt cared for by my community, even though we still had things to answer about how to run water to this structure and what kind of power and things like that. So throughout COVID, in making decisions where we've got our safety, our shared safety on our minds, and all these different things, I think the wisdom that came to me was about regrounding in the love that we have for each other and what we're really trying to do, and doing that all the time together. and especially when somebody's being vulnerable, really guarding to watch that we're never forgetting that this is someone we love who's asking us to live into what we came here to do.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any other questions or thoughts for the panel? Please step up.
Got it. All right, hi guys. I'm Andy, future. Right here. I'm Andy from Huntsville, future elder, but I've got a lot of wisdom to gain first. And my questions for you are: what are the tenets of forming community? Maybe tips or tricks that you can implement in your daily lives. And what are leadership styles that you have seen that have worked and have not, such as like councils or like relationship, matriarchal leadership styles in these community platforms. So yeah, one, tips and tricks in your daily life, and two, leaderships that do and don't work.
My biggest tip or trick is start a potluck. I recommend that to everyone who's looking to start building community, because I think food is one of the biggest ways I have found to gather and connect with other people. So start a potluck.
Something that we started to do at our center for those who are caring for those at the bedside who are crossing over is we have a care circle, which is a time each week to process and debrief what came up for you when you were caring for those who are dying. And then we realized the impact of that in terms of processing trauma and how important that is to be able to maintain a healing environment that's based in love, as you were saying, and care. Remembering that that's primary importance, and that typically when we're having logistical issues, it's the emotional issue underneath. So anyway, care circles, no matter what, regular maintenance of maintaining the heart of what you're doing, and offering that space where there's no agenda, it's just to come and be together.
Yeah, and in terms of leadership structures, goodness, there's so many, right? There's so many that have worked in certain situations and that haven't worked in other situations that appear to be the same. And I think that's really, really important to remember as we're moving into an established space as new members, or as we're new members creating something completely new. It's all so unique every moment. You know, who imagined COVID coming and how that would challenge the leadership structures that were in place? When I was doing community organizing in Philly, what was rammed into my head by my boss was the relationship is the key, just relationships. And the major tool for relationships is one-on-one conversation, one-on-ones. So at that point I was doing, 15, 45-minute conversations with people I didn't know. I had to go out in the community and just talk without an agenda, as you're saying, right? But this idea of circles is great. But the circles depend on the individual relationships in them, and individual relationships are not formed in circle. Individual relationships are formed individually, right? So it's this tip and trick and leadership model of really focusing on these relationships, and then, as groups we can research and decide, okay, well, this leadership structure, you mentioned matriarchal, or you mentioned different ways in which we can imagine what it means to be leadership. And in Kula Collective, our yoga teacher training school, over the past 10 years, we've had lots of iterations of what it means to be this core group of, we call it fractal, a core fractal, because the relationships between us are what's going to emanate out into the world. And if we're not right, then what we emanate isn't going to be right. And so there's been lots of iterations. First it was like everybody give everything that you can, and then that became a little weird because some people were giving more than others, right? So then it was like, well, what if we can figure out how to quantify that? And then there was a lot of pushback against that, because how can you quantify this unquantifiable thing of contribution to the whole? Some people do some things, and some people do other things, and what's worth what? And, so that there was. It's still we still don't have clarity on exactly what our leadership is, because it's constantly evolving. There's constantly situations. Somebody gets sick and they can't do what they were doing, or somebody burns out on doing what they were doing. It has to switch around, or we're paying somebody for doing something and then that doesn't work anymore because somebody else feels like they're not getting paid. And so there's all different ways in which this evolves. But I think the important piece of it is, again, these individual relationships are what hold us. And twice a year we get together in person for 3 days of like intense, we call it our crystal effing clear, our CFC meeting, right? Because we get clear with each other. And it's based on those relationships that we can do this, but again, it's like the coming together is fed by those relationships. And at that point, we redesign it. Every couple of years, we redesign what's working and what's not working. And part of that is again, this idea of consensus, that we don't adopt anything until everybody is on board. And so sometimes we spend 2 days trying to figure out how we're handling certain situation. And sometimes it doesn't get sorted out, and we have to like put off certain decisions that we're making, and that affects our bottom line, and blah blah blah. And like there's all these ways in which that doesn't help people in the moment. But I think the long term learning from this amorphous, sometimes difficult, challenging way of, you're talking about structures and unstructured of structures, and like where are we focusing on the people? I think that's what's really clear whenever you talk about what kind of leadership structure you want. It's like, well, who are the people involved, and what are the relationships between them like? And at that point, design something, come up with some ideas, try it out, prototype it, right? And if it doesn't work, redesign it, because that's what this is all about. It's about learning, exploring, being curious in community about what it means to drive ourselves forward, to move this into this space of our dreams, right? Because that's what we're all here to make real.
Yeah, I just want to speak to that too. It's an interesting question, particularly just the concept of leadership and like what is that? What does it mean? Because in co-housing communities, at least ours, and the principles of co-housing as I've come to understand them, is that we are leaderless groups. And no question there's people who take leadership roles, but coming to what seems to be the theme here, in a leaderless organization, in a leaderless community, what really holds the community together are these relationships. And I want to just follow what Laura was saying, how integral it is to everything you do to manage your community and develop your community. It comes down to creating spaces where you can connect outside of the work of managing the community. And so, Laura used the example of potlucks. In co-housing, what's core to co-housing, and I failed to mention this when I introduced myself, what's core to co-housing is our meal sharing culture. So some co-housing communities might share meals once a week with each other. Our community, when we started, we were sharing meals 6 days a week. And these are optional meals, but there's an expectation that you cook, which for us is once every 7 cycles. Once every 7 weeks is a cycle. And this has been fundamental to everything we do to hold our community together, to grow together, are the relationships that form through the meal sharing, through sitting down and eating together, through preparing meals together. I recently was the prep cook for one of my founding resident neighbors, and her and I have had rather conflicted relationships over all these years, in a loving way. And we hadn't spoken very much for many, many months, even though we live just down the path from each other. And in this short 2 hours of preparing a meal with each other, we spoke probably more in those 2 hours than we did in the previous 2 years. And there wouldn't have been any way for me to be able to work with her on a committee without that experience of connecting with each other as human beings beyond the cognitive experience of management, right? So I just want to offer that into the space.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I had a conflict recently, and my team and I were discussing what to do about it, and we were like, let's cook them some food and go over and talk about how awesome they are. And then we were like, that would freaking work every single time without exception. That would never not work. Like, just cook somebody a meal and come home and be like, hey, this is why I love you. As long as you're sincere, that cannot help but work, you know. So that was a funny, and it ties into what you're saying. I have some hands. Okay, so we're gonna hear from Blair, and then I've got a 1, 2, and 3 on the cue.
Thank you. I kind of want to address both questions. And I first want to say that it's very case specific. The answer to every question really is, it depends, because there's so many variables that are case specific to the site. And one of the ones that most of us who are in our ideals want to not think about is legal structure and zoning where we live, because it really determines how a community can be set up. And so that's a big question to ask yourself if you're ever moving towards community, is what's the zoning where it is, because it's going to really affect the leadership style and the culture around how to move forward. I also wanted to say that in all of those things, the one common denominator and variable that changes some but is never going to change is that you are responsible for yourself. And that this is going back to the first comment around war. If war brings you grief and distraught, I invite you to really go deeply inside yourself and ask, where does war live inside of me? What parts of war am I carrying in me that are perpetuating the distorted version of it, the greedy version? Because the truth is the common denominator that we'll all find is that we eat. If you're a vegetarian, you're still killing plants. If you're not a vegetarian, you're killing animals. It's violent. But we can't get away from it. And those are the pure roots, right? And so how does that get applied? And so another common denominator that I think can bring peace and a sense of justice to the work is to remember, like as Khalil Gibran says, that work is our prayer made visible, or our love made visible. So if we can commit to checking in with ourselves and who we are and understanding our boundaries and how permeable our boundaries are, we're always going to be able to meet and commit to committing whatever the circumstances are or the case specificity of the place that you are visiting or deciding to root down and become a part of. Can go on and on, but I'll leave it there.
You still have it? Yeah. My older sister.
Hi everybody, good to be with you. My name is Sophia. So my question is about harm, real harm, because humans are humans, and I've often found that people think, oh, I'm going to start a community and I'll vet people well enough that I'll get good people and we'll keep out the bad people. And I don't, from my experience, that's not how we are, and that's not real. Humans do things like domestic violence, hurt people, hurt others, rape happens. So any real models on any of your communities for addressing harm that are non-punitive, don't involve bringing in the state to address it, and don't involve automatically kicking the person off the community, but really focus on repair? I'd love to hear if there's any nuggets of wisdom there.
Thank you, Sophia.
That's a great question. I love that question. We have a lot of values that are, we've been an organization for, 2.5 years almost. It's hard to say. And only just recently we started putting values into place so we can hold each other to those. And one of them is reciprocal accountability, which is about owning your stuff, like you were saying, and holding one another, being clear mirrors for each other and not being afraid to say what we're seeing in each other, and being really able to sit in that and to sit in the hard, which often takes many, many months of repair. And a lot of our training processes for onboarding people, onboarding leadership and members is deep trauma and shadow work. So it's not pretty and it takes a long time and it's very arduous. So there's not really a quick answer to that question. But that's what I would say about that.
Yes, I would add as well that having our elders, our elder council, to really hold witness and be able to support in the maneuvering between conflict that has been addressed and maybe cannot be rectified within the two individuals, and needing to have that outside, holding those outside witnesses to shine light and maneuver through that. And yes, of course, that was a big one that kept popping in my head, was that value that we're holding on to, because when we're having an issue with someone, a big thing that we do is we check in of where that is coming from within ourselves. Like when we're activated, what piece of us is asking to be seen and held, so that we know how to express what a trigger point is for us, and also be able to own what piece of that is ours and not someone else's.
And having clear boundaries, like you said, of what's okay and what's not, and that requires strong leadership of saying the buck stops here as well. Both and.
I want to pass it to River, but I want to put a caveat in real quick, which is there's something that's been playing out between the right and left hemisphere of my brain throughout the last week around this question, and for years in the community of the most difficult thing for human beings, which is how do we deal with each other when we've gone off the rail, right? It's way harder than puppies. So I think like one of the things that I wanted to bring forward about that is just, if we want a gentle culture, then we have to listen. And we have a culture of constant escalation. And I think that a lot of the harm that happens is a spin out of bad communication, a spin out of lack of understanding. And I don't mean I don't mean we should be soft with people. It's understanding, it's trying to understand what's going on so we can get to the root of it. So I just want to say that there's an edge in communities. He said leadership, someone did, and yet we don't respect authority in this community. Globally. This community globally does not respect authority, period. So when we say we don't respect authority, but then we look for leadership and we're trying to address harm, we're in a really difficult situation because we don't actually have anyone authorized to address the situation. We just have these random committees that are not equipped to deal with the emotional situations. So I'm just saying, like, that's some of the paradox we're dealing with. We don't want authority, we need leadership, and sometimes it takes almost like aggressive authoritarianism to step in between harm and the people that are being harmed. So we have to do better. If we don't want people to be harmed, we have to learn how to have that strength to protect people without requiring it to be an aggressive protection. So we're still figuring that piece out. We're kind of stuck right now, I feel like. That's my personal opinion. I'm gonna pass it to River. He's got something to say.
Thanks, Biko. I think that's extremely relevant, especially now in these times. And you know, we're very new in coming together. We've only been on the land basically since September, but we spent the first 6 months, even before we got to the land, working together with a number of the members to come together to create a living agreements that would help to govern things in a way, and everybody who's coming into our circle is around freedom, actually, sovereignty, and many things in that reality. So there's a commonality there, and I think what was coming up for me around the sense of leadership, it's so loaded. that everybody has a different interpretation and relationship with leadership, good and bad and ugly. And what I always feel is common is vision. It's like, and it's not a ship, because we're not out at sea. Like a leadership, it denotes that we're all kind of on this thing together, and someone needs to lead it to get somewhere. I think when there's a common vision, and people can get more refined in what that is and be a part of creating that vision, then they have a buy-in, an active contribution to that, and they hold that as the guiding light of what we're doing together, rather than, in a lot of cases, running away from something else. A lot of communities, I feel, have come around from running away from something else, rather than creating something new. And that's what we strive to do, is create to clarify a vision with our members, so they understand their role and position in that. And then there's all the other things that are getting set up in the living agreements on a more practical level to have some governance in there. But it's a living agreement, so it's open to change, and that makes it a dynamic thing. And it's called living agreements, not to tell people how to live, but that it's alive, and it doesn't get entrenched as much in our old belief systems, because we're aspiring for a vision that's something that we know innately that we can achieve, but we just lost in terms of how to get there, because the ship left the shore and we got stuck out at sea, and now it's about returning to the land again and in our own sovereignty. So I just wanted to share that little insight. Thank you.
We had just a cue, I believe. Yes. And while she's walking up here, I'm still noticing, which I've been noticing for a couple decades, we're still having a hard time addressing this, like, what do we do when things go sideways? What are our policies for restorative justice? So it's something to think about. Passing this over.
Thank you. So it was really shocking when Biko mentioned. It was really shocking when Biko mentioned that 20-somethings came here about 50 years ago, and there's still 80% of those founders here, and it's really, really hard to imagine that 20-somethings would do something like that today. Like, really hard to imagine, for me anyway. And I'm wondering, what are some cultural shifts that you think maybe have happened that have contributed to that? And also, how do you see that cultural shift show up in your communities today?
I came here when I was 22, so and people were shocked. I think when we landed on the farm and we were getting to know the community, and they said, "How old are you?" And I said, "Oh, well, we're 22." It was me and my partner, and they were stoked to have some young people who wanted to come, and we haven't left since. So I think there's still people out there, young people who are willing to do it. And in the beginning of my journey on the farm, I worked at the Eco Village Training Center, which was a training center on the farm, a permaculture training center, and I was the hospitality manager. So I was dealing with an influx of guests who wanted to come and visit the farm or intern or just check it out. And in my personal experience, I think I was there 2.5 years, many of them were college-age students who were searching for something different, which is not unlike the 20-somethings who came to the farm originally. They knew something in them told them that there was something else out there, and that's still in us. And they're just seeking for the ways that they can plug in. So that's my personal experience, is that I came here young and felt very aligned with, like, I probably would have done it back in the 70s if I was 20 then too, and like joined right in. So I think that it's still in a lot of us, and we're seeking, and we have to find the ways to plug the seekers in.
So River and I connected a couple years ago and recognized that we had a shared mission, and one of the tenets of what we're around is focused on education. And I think that naturally draws in the younger people, especially when you're working with a revolutionary material like hemp. And so our model, a lot of our members are in their elder years, but really wanting to create a multi-generational community. And since we're new in that physical manifestation of it, it's really relevant for us to make sure that we are magnetizing those younger generations. And so the way that our model is doing that is through education, teaching them natural building, homesteading, and bringing people back to the land with regenerative agriculture and syntropic agroforestry. We're finding there is massive interest and energy. But again, for us, it's about attracting those that are resonating with that vision that River spoke to. For us, it's not just about attracting anyone and everyone. We're not a woofing model. We're really trying to create an economy around teaching an actual skill, like how to build a hemp house, when an economy is growing rapidly around that. So it's creating a tangible skill that they can translate, whether it was within our own model, and we don't call ourselves an intentional community. We identify as a trade school, intentionally. So that we can actually inspire and motivate young people to come and learn a skill and be seed bombs out into different areas, or in the areas much like what we understand has happened at the farm, where community, different groups grow around a certain central community. So we're finding a tremendous inspired young people that want a new way. That this is a time for humanity to make some significant steps forward, and we feel that hemp as a plant not only builds healthy homes, and here in Tennessee where we are too, we know mold is a real issue, health issue, living in toxic boxes. So how can we create something that's going to teach them a valuable skill and build an economy around that? So that's what we're finding.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. It led me to start imagining, what is my experience with that question? And following Laura, I was in my late 20s when I first imagined building a community. I'm 44 now. And what I can recognize is that at that time versus today, I would probably not be able to do what I did then now, just because of the cost of land and the cost of real estate. A community that you live in doesn't have to be on 25 acres of land. Many communities are being built in cities, in urban areas. And the access to real estate, the access to land has become prohibitive in our current sort of economic climate. I think my experience is there are a lot of young people who are very interested in these unique models of alternative living, and yet that one piece of getting access to land is the most prohibitive factor for them. And so I think, looking forward, how do we create alternative models and approaches to accessing land? That really seems to be the key, but the passion, my sense, is there for this type of community living.
I'm going to speak to you, but I want to speak this way first, okay? So I want to really thank everybody that's here. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm brand new in Tennessee, from California, but really from Atlantis and a whole nother world. And the thing I want to bring to you as a question and to all of us is an issue that I feel like we keep ignoring, no matter where we're looking, no matter whether we're looking at community living, or we're looking at city government, or state, or cultural, or country. And the issue is erotic wellness. How are we organizing for erotic wellness? Because the source of violence is erotic disease. And erotic disease is what's been created when we shifted from the matriarchal model that had a connection between sex and spirit to the model we're in right now where there's that division. And you think about the word ignorance, and it means ignorance. We are ignoring the fundamental, we said, food brings us together. It's the thing we all do. We all eat. We all sex. And we are not, I want to know how you as communities are bringing your children up in a way that's different from what we're doing, which is give our kids instruction in anything they want until they get to young teenagers, and then don't do drugs and don't do sex. How crazy is that? What is that leaving them with? So I could go on, but I'm going to ask the panel to talk.
And also, if there's anybody that has direct experience in the audience, also raise your hand. We welcome your wisdom as well.
My answer to this question is, first off, I'm still a baby and figuring it out. But in that, it's also the same answer that I have for the sister who was asking about how to deal with some of the repercussions of not having what you're talking about. And that's ceremony. I think that there's a lot of leadership in the form of elders around how to come together in ceremony and really honor that and ask ourselves what that means for us with some guidance from the elders who've been handing it down in tradition. And I think that also part of that within the context of ceremony is a ritualized space for trance and deep remembering, which I think is at some point part of the root of what we're trying to do here with music and this kind of opening the space of the boundaries, making more permeability between us so we understand the space between us and who we are, both in our sovereignty as an individual, but what we are as a collective and as a unit. And I think that to some degree, by us being able to do that more and more and condone spaces where the kind of trance where we're supporting each other, where we're holding each other, when someone might be in that ecstatic state that leaves them naked and trying to kiss their neighbor, when that's crossing that neighbor's boundary, and here's the other kind of caveat, we talked about accountability. We say holding accountability all the time. We want to hold you accountability, but we don't want to hold the person in accountability. Instead, we want the cancellation. And so these are questions, at least, that I'm asking myself. How do I hold someone through accountability when it comes to that? And then relating it back to this place of ceremony, the moment of noble silence, where we are really going deep to ask ourselves not only who we are, but who we are, and how we meet each other, and how we create safe and sacred space from community to the bedroom. And how that relates to distortions in our culture that do lead to rape, that do lead to the types of war that all of us grieve. I'm gonna leave it there.
That's a beautiful question. The short answer would be eco-Sophie. And eco-Sophie is a deep term. I'm not going to go too far into it, but it's when we raise younglings in an orientation where we see life through a biophilic way. We're in love with life. My background is syntropic agroforestry, and I've studied syntropy in human ecology, and so I'd love to have a sit with you later on, because I see there's turbulence in your cells around it, so maybe we can have a little chat, because it's a beautiful question, but it's not a 2-minute answer. But what I would say is that a lot of it goes to how did we get here? and the deeper comprehension of the succession in the degradation of, we've seen it in agriculture, but we can see it in culture. Understanding imperialism, colonialism, and what that has done to the fabric of our human ecology, and how we can regenerate that. Those are beautiful conversations, and to me, syntropy is the missing link, but eco-Sophie would be the lens to see that through.
Thank you so much. Wow. I would love to have, I invite you all to continue to gather in circle and have conversation about these topics. And one of the things that I really love about what you just shared is that it's not all about us being humans. It's about us, the big us. Like, how are the cells in your body doing, and all of that. And when we talk about broken relationships, it always starts at the smallest level. And when people ask about the intention of this gathering, like, there's a lot of different answers, but for me it's just really simple: more life. We just want more life. We want the roots to go deeper and the branches to grow taller. We want, like, people's bellies to be full of better food, you know, and the animals to thrive, the diversity to increase. And that when we safeguard what's under our feet and what's around us, then we begin to build the healthy culture that can heal some of these problems that we've inherited as root issues. But it doesn't mean that they're endemic to human nature. It means that they're representative of a damaged global ecology, you know. So I love that you brought that up. As we think about human relationships, I think the more we can include everything else into our definition of human, I think the closer we get to harmony together. We have a room for a couple more topics. We're gonna, or not topics, but comments, but we are gonna close down fairly soon and start getting the stage ready for the evenings. I have one more question and we're gonna do one more comment.
Hello. I just have a question that I'm sure everyone is wondering. What do you tell someone that is interested in becoming a community member? What is the process? What is the vetting process? How can someone initiate coming into a community and saying, hey, I have the skill, I want to contribute, I have the passion, the heart? But those are words, right? So what is the 3-month period, 6-month period? And if it doesn't work out, how can people exit gracefully?
So one thing, like all these being very particular, that the answer to that is going to be different for every community. So I don't think there's one way to describe that, but some resources, if you're just like prickling on this, you feel drawn to this, that I would recommend to people would be try to visit some communities. Some resources for doing that are through like Work Exchange, websites like Woof or Workaway might give an opportunity to go live in and check out a community. IC.org, the Intentional Communities Directory, is a big resource for learning about maybe there are intentional communities close to you. So I don't know that there's so many different processes and so many different things people even mean when they say community. Like it can range in so many ways. So I think starting to just get a sense of what people are even up to, and when they're saying community, what do they mean? And for me, visiting and having time to live and work in a few different communities gave me this sense, you start with one imagination of it, and then the more you start to visit, the more you have choice, because you see how other folks are doing it, what they're imagining. So the starting place, I would say, like visiting, imagining with people, or creating something yourself, and just knowing you also, it's like we're just making this up. There's resources out there, but we're making this up as we go, and you can do that too.
I think you're asking specifically what our requirements are for each of us up here. We have a very specific process, So we have a mutual vetting, kind of modeled after a co-housing community that we studied in Colorado. But for us, we're vetting you, you're vetting us, and typically it's a 3 to 6 month process. So we are a trade school, but we are allowing residential members to be part, so the trust is a shared land model, but people do have their own lots within that. So there's a certain number of those lots, and there are some that are still available because we're tiering that out. But that process goes through, there's different materials that we'll share. It definitely includes an on the land time together. That's definitely part of that requirement. So when people come to us, we send them to our website. They're going to go and look at information. A lot of people have been following our journey together, so they've been kind of a previous relationship that we've built on, and there are a lot of people that are in our circle that are sharing it with other people. So it's very organic, very syntropic. We use this model, and for me, I'm a mother of 6 children. My 4 birth children were all born at home, so this is kind of the model that I brought. But basically, through that process of raising my own children and kind of studying community the last several decades, just brought this model into a refinement, and then with what River has learned studying around internationally. So we've done a lot of research to come to this point, but I feel in raising my own children that it was really important to have structure, and in that structure we find the freedom. And so that's a really big way of how we go into it. So if you're interested, I'm happy to share more, and we're going to be over the table if anybody wants to see a hemp block or learn more. There's a picnic table over there. We'll hang out for a while after.
And I just wanted to add one other thing. It's not just, we have these member events where people can come. They get to a certain point in the conversation and then they kind of commit at a certain level. It is about committing, because there's a lot of people who are just kind of tourists, and we don't want to waste our time with that. So people have to get to a place of commitment within themselves. And then actually what's really important is how people work together, not just how people play together. Because playing's really easy, but the metal hits the road when people have to actually get shit done. And that's a big part of why communities dissipate and have struggle, is because people have different values around work, a work ethic. And so that's really important in this process. It's not about coming and la-di-da, it's actually come and get shit done. How are you going to show up with other people, and how are you going to work with other people? Because that is really critical. And I just want to say one other thing that hasn't been mentioned. It's outside of this insular model. I find that this insular model that gets created sometimes creates an echo chamber, which is really can be really dangerous. And I think we need to look at community as beyond just the walls of what we're trying to create, and how do we connect with people in the area that we're coming to, because we're taking something that they've created. They created a beautiful container, and so we bring the sacred back, but we also look to bring an economy to the local people, not just to the people within the enclave that we're creating. And I think that creates a dynamic where we're not in this echo chamber, and we're not just staring at each other for the answers, but we're creating a bigger dynamic, and that reaches out into the community a lot further. Sorry for interrupting.
I feel like Hannah and I can both collaborate to speak about the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. There is multiple ways you can become a member, and we start the discovery session, and so that is a Zoom call with our director of volunteers, and you're able to get a better feel of our community and what our vision is and what we're holding, and see if that vibes for both parties. And then there is immersion days, which is a day-long retreat where you get to meet other fellow people who are coming in to start volunteering as well, and you get to really drop in to the essence of CCLD. And from there you have, we have over 15 teams now that you can really decide what calls to you, and you can join one of those teams. You can do direct care training, which is if you want to be at the bedside. And then we also have we have donating members, and we have so many different events. So there is a wealth of options to find what fits for you to the extent in which you want to commit, and where you feel like you'll best be able to serve our community.
I can kind of briefly talk about the farm's membership process. If I'm visiting, like Lindsay said, is always the first step if you're able to visit often or regularly, and I always recommend people put their intention out there. If you truly are interested in living here, then like let people know that, and generally we do the best we can to connect you with the right people who want to get to know people who want to live here. And so once you are able to move here to the land or rent a space or something like that, we have a 45-day kind of process, and we have what we call sponsors to help guide you through the membership process and kind of be an advocate for you and help connect you in with the community. I had the best sponsors in the world, Mark and Caroline. Did a great job. And after the 45-day process, we have a membership committee that is elected, and they have cycles. And you meet with them and you become a resident, and then it's a 1-year residency. Then you can be voted into provisional membership, and once you're a provisional member, you can buy a house or claim a house site, and then full membership is a year after that, and full membership the whole community votes, and it's like a 2/3 voting process. And full membership, we can vote on different community issues. We get a say on the budget, and things like that. And it's a pretty long process, and there's a lot of conversation all the time if it's the most efficient process or not. So it's been how it is for a long time, and if you stick through it, it works. But it's a conversation always.
We have to wrap it up, so I'll be pretty quick. I'd like to just speak to something that I do think that can be applied across this case specificity of each place, because it is going to be very depending. But as someone who's approaching someplace that's already in its journey towards leaving its legacy, I invite you to really consider that when you show up, that you are then affecting the geometry of relationship and responsibility. Take that in for a second. The relationship of the geometry of relationship, the geometry of responsibility. So if you come and you have a sponsor or you're part of a program, your presence completely changes the geometric structure of how things get done. And so going back to committing, it's very important that people realize that the time that's taken to make and hold space for someone to come is a gift and a blessing. And it's reciprocal. It goes both ways, as long as both parties understand that that geometry and that relationship and that responsibility is something to be held accountable to. But if you're a person who's just going to come in and just want to test the waters and head out, that maybe it's not really the time just yet, because it's a big effort on the hosts to hold that space for you to just touch the water and leave. But instead, stick around to understand some of the invisible structures that exist, because you can go and see something in a tour or a work party, but to actually be a part of it requires enough time to be a part of the invisible structure. Thanks.
Well, I mean, this conversation could go on for 50 years and we still wouldn't have it figured out. We're living proof of that here on the farm. So we're gonna wrap up this part of the day, but what we hope happens is that each person up here becomes a little eddy in your pool this weekend, and you kind of take a moment to connect to someone that you felt resonant with, and tune in about something that was valuable to you, and get to know the different projects each person up here is involved in, and keep exploring community. And I guess I'll leave you with what I took away from being here with these folks, which is the big vision is very complicated. The small vision is just relationships. So if you cultivate loving, trusting, strong relationships, you are building community. You're building strong, loving, trusting communities. And that we can do that all around us all the time. If you get enough love and if you get enough trust, then it's worth working together to build a community. But don't start with the idea and try to skip the love and trust, because you'll never get anywhere. It's the love and trust first, and you build that, and then you can take the ideas anywhere and support each other. And with that, we're so grateful for your ears, your minds, your hearts, your eyes, your breath. Thank you for being here and creating a space for everyone to share. And thank you to all the panelists for sharing. And we hope to share so much more throughout the weekend, and as a good friend says, as often as possible for the rest of our lives. Thank you guys so much.
I have flyers for anyone who's interested in any of the programs that we offer here. Thanks.